Racism, both a concept and an idea that one race or ethnic group is superior to another. Racism has been a constant factor in American history and has influenced many fears and prejudices that citizens have developed over time. As a country, it is important that we try to understand more about the tragic events that have taken place in our history.
Pearl Harbor had been the breaking point for America. The day after Pearl Harbor, America declared war on Japan and its allied forces. However, Americans still didn't feel safe. They applied a lot of pressure on the government to place restrictions on other American citizens of Japanese descent.
They feared that any citizen of Japanese descent were dangerous and were going to cause them harm because of the traumatic event.
A contributing factor of the intense fear of American civilians was the spread of misinformation regarding Japanese Americans. With the anti-Japanese propaganda, many American citizens started viewing their Japanese neighbors as enemies. The propaganda was used to convince the people that there was a silent invasion and that these people were dangerous, even though these people were still American. Before the executive order, there had already been 3,000 people of Japanese ancestry who were arrested by the Office Naval of Intelligence, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Army's G2 Intelligence. However, the citizens ultimately believed that this wasn't enough, henceforth, the Japanese internment camps. The families were given specific instructions involving what they were allowed to bring, such as bedding, utensils, hygiene necessities, and necessary personal items. However, they were not allowed to bring any pets, large personal items, and no household goods were permitted to be shipped to the area.
While living in the internment camps, many of the incarcerated Americans of Japanese descent suffered through bizarre living conditions. We met with Sandra Tanamachi, a daughter of one of the survivors of the Rower War Relocation Center in Arkansas, and discussed what the living situation was like.
And they were forced to live in a horse stall. Each family was made to live in a horse stall. It didn't matter how large or small your family was. You were just given a horse stall.
They were also forced to eat unsanitary and unhealthy food products that they were not accustomed to in their diet, which caused many illnesses that were not treated for. Their living quarters were uninsulated, and their only protection from the cold was cots and coal-powered stoves. The camps were surrounded by barbed wire, and soldiers were ordered to shoot anyone who tried to leave. In response to these conditions, the residents were fairly amicable and complied with what they were ordered to do. The majority of opposition came in the form of legal battles and peaceful protests. Minoru Yasui, Gordon K. Hirabayashi, and Fred T. Korematsu were a few people who opposed the camps and tried arguing for a better solution to the Supreme Court. In response, the Supreme Court justified it as a wartime necessity. Even in this dark time, many of the Japanese Americans made do with what they had and formed a community. Following the Japanese internment camps, many surviving interned citizens had an increased risk of heart disease, died earlier, and the majority, if not all, suffered from psychological trauma.
The internment camps were not officially disbanded until March 20th, 1946. It took 40 years, but finally the United States of America apologized by giving all the victims $20,000 to $80,000 to each of the survivor members in the camps and the families of the victims. Additionally, they issued a law that acknowledged the injustice of internment camps.
This topic is a crucial part of U.S. history because it impacted the lives of Japanese Americans living through that time and generations to follow, which led to decades of racism towards Japanese Americans. Even now, people still hold negative connotations with Japanese Americans. Many historians, teachers, and surviving incarcerees believe that this topic needs to be more prevalent in today's education, as not enough people know about this part of American history.
They have no idea that any of this happened. Of course, they know about Pearl Harbor, but that's about it. They don't know then what happened to Japanese Americans who were born here in the United States.
As the camps displayed, the consequence of our lack of knowledge can lead to more racism in the future towards different races and ethnic groups, and we should strive to learn about how fear can manipulate entire nations into going against what they stand for. This event is relevant today because similar situations have nearly occurred in this very country.